What were the opportunities you first took that really transformed your life and your business?
You know, I'm a firm believer, when you're young, you look at opportunities a very different way. You look at it with naivety and you look at seizing opportunities.
Right.
As you mature in your career, I think that seizing becomes a lot more evolved and gut comes into play. And for most people, gut seems to be, it's not waking up in the morning and then having a feeling about it. It's an evolved gut, because that's when you start making possibly more right decisions than the wrong decisions. So I think I went through the phase in my first 10 years of my career when I was starting up as an entrepreneur, where the naivety allows you to look at opportunities differently. Then failures allow you to look at opportunities very differently. And then maturity, size of market, potential, team, maturity, where do you want to take it, has been the third cycle of my learning on opportunities, broadly is what I would say.
In order to take your opportunities, did you exploit changes in the environment? For example, in the early 80s when you went into media, what was going on within the overall environment that gave you this opportunity?
So I think what's excited me when it's come to opportunities is that it's pioneering in some form, and that sort of obsessed me. Scale has obsessed me, but being a pioneer in some form is always something that is highly risky, but it's excited me. When I've done that with media at a time when nobody could pronounce media and entertainment, to now in EdTech when people are still looking at whether that's the future or not. So I think those are the ones that would really turn me on. Having said that, I think my key learning is that there's a small sliver between being before your time and being a pioneer. And for that, you require a lot of work. So I think most people feel just getting into it makes the difference. But I think there's a lot of homework that goes into not being before your time. And I think the two things that I've spent a fair amount of time on is a deep understanding of the consumer and preempting trends. If I had to look at these two criteria that have sort of held me instead over a period of the last 20 years, it's really about preempting trends. And if I can get more right than I got wrong, then I'm at a good place.
When you say preempting trends, do you mean predicting trends?
Yeah, that's where the pioneering comes in, I guess, right? So if you're preempting trends, the very aspect of you preempting them means possibly the consumer may not be necessarily ready to accept that at a price point or in the particular shape of product or service that you're going to go. That's when you start looking at how you're going to create a market.
Could you give an example where you did that?
I think in media and entertainment, we were creating a market. The first 30 people that I hired, after I hired them, their parents interviewed me as to what is it that you're doing and what is this business activity when my son or daughter is going to come and work with you for what? That's as pioneering as it gets. That's as basic as it gets. But if you think so, and every time I met them, I had to explain to them what my vision was. And I think in that 30 interviews, my vision got formulated in a very different manner. But I think if you look at that, it was market making. You were creating, there wasn't a context that said media and entertainment. Broadcasting channels hadn't come in. So we started off by doing ad commercials, corporate video documentaries, airline in-flight programming. We started a dubbing studio for all the Hollywood majors that were coming here to start TV channels and their movies. We started an animation outsourcing studio. We started a post-production studio, and everyone looked at that saying, where's your focus? And I said, look, all of these are all interconnected. So you're kind of market making at an early stage. And then from there, one or two things is where we spearheaded to go forward.
Why were you able to see that opportunity when others didn't? Was it a hard opportunity for you to envision?
I think as an entrepreneur, you're pushing the envelope. I think when you look at, I want to start the business, this is the sector I want to be in, and then you go in there thinking, I have no choice, I have to build on that. Then you innovate as you go forward, and you create markets. What I'm saying is there were enough people doing one of these 8 things. There were ad commercial producers, there were people who were doing each of our activities.
Okay.
But the consolidation of it becoming a media entity in the B2B space was very unique and different. But that gave you the breadth of activity for us to then become a broadcaster, a movie studio, a game studio, an animation studio, and much more. Okay. Similarly, if I cut to last 5 years in EdTech, I think again that's market making. We're obviously in a sector where the education sector is highly regulated. But if I look at what we are in Upgrad and we look at how we want to scale that up, it's market making. Working professionals today, education is looked at as an event. You do it in school, you do it in college, and then you're done. Now, you don't want to go back and get educated, so to speak. And going back to college is more like a sort of a punchline rather than actually doing that. So how do you sort of establish lifelong learning, which is definitely whose time has come, is market making.
Is your Upgrad platform also for people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s?
Absolutely. I mean, our sweet spot of people is 25 to 35 with a sweet spot of 30, but that's the working professional. But our working professionals now are from 2 years into a job to 25 years into a job. Because I think everyone has realized that at every 5 to 6 years in their working professional career, there are two aspects. The people who are already well versed but still need to upgrade themselves and get specialized, and the people who got into the work life at a very early stage for socioeconomic reasons, but now feel completely at lost at having not done the basics.
Is this all online learning?
Upgrad is fully 100% online. Again, I think we bucked the trend. The naysayers is really where the big test between opportunity and reality comes about, right? Because I think you can spot an opportunity. There's no real patent or rewards for saying I got a great idea. Because if you pause after that, it's all about then what are you going to do with that opportunity? Otherwise, it's just a saying. So I think we bucked the trend where people have said, in India, will people pay the kind of money or such a high ARPU? I think India is one of the lowest ARPU countries in the world, whether it's in content, telecom, whichever you look at that. But we think counterintuitively when it comes to learning and education, where actually if we get the right price, people will respect it a little bit more than if you just say it's available at the lowest price. So that's where we've been counterintuitive on each of those opportunities. So converting an opportunity and making that into a successful reality over a protracted period of time has its own core strengths.
Besides your passion for education, what were the other criteria you used to evaluate the Upgrad opportunity?
So I think the other part I would say is serendipity plays a big role in whatever you do. At least for me it has. You know, if somebody asked me, did I want to be a media entrepreneur? No, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Media happened along the way because I did a lot of theater in school and college as a hobby. And then I used to do front of camera hosting at that stage in the only state broadcasting channel. So my exposure to what I thought at that time was that level of media and entertainment got me serendipitously into media and entertainment, which I didn't look at as a job. I think this time around, when I was looking at my second innings, having sold my media business, I think in about a year, I invested in a few companies and decided I'm a doer. I'm not an investor. I felt that's what really gets me going. Start all over again. Again, many people said, but now at this age, do you want to start and build all over again the same whole hassle? And I said, yeah, that turns me on. So it took me about a year to understand a couple of sectors that I wanted to look at. And education was one of them. And again, it's serendipitous because I was also looking at packaged foods and one or two other sectors. But for me, the criteria was meet as many people in these three sectors and then see what settles for me. And the more people I met in education at that stage, I got quite inspired because I felt my strength from my first innings in media was being able to tell a story, building a brand, building it at scale, building credibility. And I think I found a lot of commonalities that with that in education. Right. Because at the end, the core learning is about storytelling. You know, it's like the best things you remember about your university or whatever is the case studies. Right. And case studies at the end of the day is a storytelling. And if I can say it in a much more and teach it and learn it in a very different manner. So I think that's what got me into education. And the last one was because I met a lot more interesting people there, I found my co-founders. So did I go out there and said, I'm going to get into education? It was a iterative process that took the better part of a year.
It sounds like it fits your own desires as well.
Of what I want to do for the next 10 years.
Okay. What is the mindset that you have that has allowed you to take advantage of opportunities? And what are the lessons from that for other people?
I think one is the risk-taking appetite. That's especially when you're pioneering or when you're market making, the risk-taking appetite has got to be big. The second one is you've got to go out there very clear that there is no plan B. I operate very well when I operate with a plan A and then try and stick 99.9% on the plan A. I know, you know, in management school and many other places, it's nice to have a plan B. But actually, I've found that when you're in the heat of something, not having a plan B puts you an incredible pressure on you to actually move in a particular direction to make it happen. Unless that route was completely wrong, in which case you'll figure it out in some stage and withdraw totally. And I think the third one would be this whole element of what drives me is what choice do I have? I constantly put that behind me because then you don't look at failure as a comma. And then you keep getting driven based on the fact that, okay, this didn't work, whatever I wanted to do. When we started our film studio, the first 5 movies we made were a complete disaster. My CFO came in and said, I think we need to wrap this business up. But at that stage, I felt if I wanted to build a brand, I wanted to build a B2C company in media and entertainment, I wanted to build something at scale, outside of the 10 broadcasting channels and the animation studio and the post-production studio that we had, a movie studio was an element part of it. If I had thought about it in a very logical, contrived manner, it was pretty much that maybe we didn't have the core competence. But you need to stay with it. And the last thing I would say is the ability for people to stay the course, because you can't time success and you can't time failure. So if you can stay the course, and not if you can, but you need to stay the course, that's really actually half of success, is staying the course.
Did staying the course give you a learning curve and you were able to ride up that learning curve?
Without it being stupid, it's not a carte blanche situation. You have to also know when to pull the plug.
Right.
But that pull the plug doesn't need to be on that sector, or I'm not going to pull the plug on being an entrepreneur. I'm not going to pull the plug on being in Aptech. But the other aspects of whether I should have diversified into B2B model, if this model, those you can pull the plug on. But the core of what you set out to do as an entrepreneur in your life, or a sector or a business, you should stay true to that.
How important to you has reverence been as part of your mindset, especially in relation to your industry and the usual norms of your industry?
Irreverence to me is very important. Anyway, you normally build team members who give you that balance. They'll add their sense of conservatism, they'll add their sense of structure, the SOPs, the process that goes with that. So there is a good balance. But somebody or a group of people do need to be reverent. Because I think more than ever today in the 21st century, precedent is getting less and less relevant. This is how it got things done. Whenever somebody tells me that, I say, just hold on to that thought process. Or they said, yeah, well, and how far back did they try it? And they said 6 months. And I'm saying, 6 months will also be a big time lesson. Otherwise, people said, look, for the last 5 years we've been doing it, it hasn't worked. That doesn't mean the 6th year it's not going to work. So I think the element of irreverence is very, very important to build a business, to build growth, and to really actually keep reinventing. Because if that's lost, then reinvention gets lost.
In terms of opportunities and seeking opportunities, what would you caution people not to do?
I think you need clarity of thought. I think we need to be clear. Half the time we might be doing things as to how we want to be viewed or seen or perceived. So sometimes you start a business just based on the fact that your friend circles are entrepreneurs, you want to do that. Is this your DNA? Is this something that you feel you want to do? Many people in a professional career feel, I'm sick of this. I think I should work for myself.
Right.
Now that's not a good enough reason to, because you might be asking for much more. And then you get into making a deal with yourself saying, I'll try it for 2-3 years, which is a disaster because you can't try it for 2-3 years. Either you're moving in that direction or you're not. So I think that clarity of thought and conviction in yourself has got to be most important. I think my reservoir is my confidence and my conviction. A lot of that I learned in my early days, a lot due to failures. But that strong sense of conviction and confidence of what you want to do, why you want to do it is important, and not trying to put the benchmark the way you see other people seeing you. And I think that's symptomatic of what I think today the generation that's, when you're looking at raising funds, I think half the time people are building businesses just to raise funds.
It seems like it, yeah.
And that's flawed, obviously, because the first core is you're really excited about the business that you're building. And of course, it will need funding. But I think the badge of honor can't be the means to the end. That's something I think also people need to watch out for.
How do you assess results? Is it purely financial metrics, or do you look at useful service to customers or filling value gaps? What are your criteria?
No, I don't think a pure financial metric can work for any successful business. And I'm not saying, therefore, impact, and I'm not saying impact in an esoteric sense. I'm not a firm believer that you need to make social, but either you need to be a not-for-profit or you need to be a for-profit. And if you're for-profit, you need to be a proper for-profit. And I've met a lot of people who are saying, but we're making impact, that's why for less profit. And I'm saying that's the wrong way to go, because there's no such model as for less profit. So when you're in the for-profit space, I think the criteria for success is actually product and technology form a big part of what you want to do. Because if you haven't connected with that, obviously your consumer is right. So that feedback, the repeat, if your product and service has some sort of repeat, that's your best metrics to figure out that. Because otherwise, to acquire a customer today in any form is a costly exercise. to retain them is the most important element of that. So getting your product and tech right is very, very critical and important. The internal, what I would call the internal culture of an organization is also very, very critical, because today getting an organization aligned can actually be the difference between a 5 on 10 organization and an 8 on 10. I mean, for me, the word nice is about the most waste of time, bland word that happens. When, and I keep counseling my daughter when she says, that's nice. I said, what does that mean? Either you love it or you hate it. What is nice about it, And when I go around a room in the office and I'm taking things, so I said, okay, give me a rating on that. And half the room says 5 on 10. And I'm saying, I'll take that as a 0, because 5 on 10 again is a very bland rating. It's like you're not sure whether it's bad or good. So I think just pushing your envelope to get your organization and culture to either you're a 2 on 10, which means massive improvement, or you're an 8 on 10, which means the cup is more half full than empty. But this cup half full and half empty is the stage which I think is dangerous for organizations, can lead to a lot of complacency and a lot of confusion.
In terms of implementation of opportunities, you use the word alignment. What do you mean by that?
On a common road, because I think walking shoulder to shoulder, there's a sense of power, there's a sense of positive energy. I think when you come to work, normally it sucks your energy in some form or the other. And even if you're getting a good day, it's an energy sucker. Then you need to take a walk, you need to read something, you need to have a hot bath, you need to meditate, you need to play golf, whatever you do to get your energy back. And I think if people are aligned in a work environment, you suck a lot less energy than what gets sucked, because 90% of your energy is getting sucked because people are not aligned in an organization.
In terms of managing an organization for execution, is cooperation more important than conflict?
Yeah, and then you're second guessing, and I think in my second innings, one of the first things I've laid down, even though I've said I want to start all over again, build a company, was the context of this whole element of HR, and 50% of a CEO's time going into people management, I think needs to change, and it can change if everyone's aligned.
All right, thanks.
Lovely, thank you.